The ruling Democratic Party emerged as the clear winner in Korea's June 3rd local elections, claiming victory in 12 of 16 mayoral and gubernatorial races nationwide. But in the race that drew the most attention, incumbent Seoul Mayor Oh Se-hoon of the People Power Party successfully defended his seat, giving the opposition a crucial win in the capital. In the parliamentary by-elections, the Democratic Party won 9 of 14 seats, while the People Power Party secured 3 victories in the Yeongnam region. Independent candidate Han Dong-un also claimed a closely watched win in Busan's Book A district. As the Lee Jae-myung administration marks its first year in office, we look back at the key outcomes of President Lee's pragmatic diplomacy and economic policies and assess their impact at home and abroad. Korea's local elections and parliamentary by-elections have delivered a mixed but politically significant result. The ruling Democratic Party expanded its influence across much of the country, while the conservative opposition managed to hold on to some key battlegrounds. For a closer look at what the results mean for Korean politics, our correspondent Moon Hae-ryun joins us in the studio. Welcome back, Hae-ryun.
Thanks for having me, Tammy.
Hae-ryun, let's begin with the local elections. What stands out most from the results? Let's start with that.
So the headline is that the DP has managed to consolidate its political dominance. The party won 12 of 16 gubernatorial and mayoral races, giving it control of most regional governments and extending its influence beyond the presidency and the National Assembly. But the story is more nuanced than a simple landslide. The most closely watched contest was the Seoul mayoral race, where conservative incumbent Oh Se-hoon narrowly held on despite a strong challenge from the DP.
Voters have reaffirmed the principle of checks and balances, safeguarding Seoul's democracy.
I humbly accept the voters' verdict. I fell short, and I take full responsibility.
That result denied the ruling party a complete sweep of the capital region and gives conservatives an important political foothold heading into the second year of President Lee Jae-myung's term. Elsewhere, however, the DP performed strongly. It retained Gyeonggi-do province and Incheon while also capturing Busan, a city that has traditionally been regarded as conservative territory. Even in Daegu, one of the country's most reliably conservative regions, the race was far more competitive than many had expected. Many analysts see the results as a sign that voters remain broadly supportive of President Lee's administration 1 year after he took office.
And furthermore, I think it shows that a major proportion of the citizenry is actually in support of President Lee's administration and has strong faith in his good performance throughout the remaining years of his presidency.
And Hae-ryun, at the same time, voters elected new lawmakers in a series of parliamentary by-elections. What stood out from those elections?
So several of these contests actually carried a significance far beyond the constituencies themselves. And the biggest spotlight was on Busan's Book A district, where former PPP leader Han Dong-un won as an independent candidate after breaking with his party. His victory keeps him at the center of national politics and could make him a major player in any future reorganization of the conservative camp. Another closely watched race was Incheon's Gyeonggi district, formerly represented by President Lee before he moved to the Blue House. The DP comfortably held the seat, reinforcing its strength in what has long been considered one of its strongholds. But perhaps the most dramatic result came in Pyeongtaek-B, where veteran conservative lawmaker Yoo Hee-dong defeated 4 other candidates, including not only the DP candidate but also Cho Guk, leader of the smaller progressive Rebuilding Korea Party. Cho's defeat is particularly significant because it weakens his party at a time when merger discussions with the DP have been widely discussed. Overall, the ruling party won 9 of the 14 parliamentary seats at stake, preserving its overwhelming advantage in the National Assembly.
Indeed. Hae-ryun, let us wrap up with this ultimate question. What impact could these results have on Korean politics going forward?
So the immediate fallout is most likely to be felt very strongly inside the conservative opposition. Right. And although the PPP managed to defend Seoul and gain several parliamentary seats, its poor performance nationwide is expected to trigger renewed debate over the party's direction and leadership. Han Dong-un's return to parliament could further intensify those discussions, particularly among conservatives who argue the party needs to appeal more effectively to moderate and metropolitan voters. On the ruling side, attention is turning to the future of the Rebuilding Korea Party, with Cho-guk saying that he will step down from his post as its leader. His defeat may complicate merger talks with the DP, at least in the short term, although pressure for broader progressive unity could re-emerge before the next general election in 2028. In the National Assembly, however, the overall balance of power remains largely unchanged. Together with allied parties, the DP still controls more than 180 seats, enough to fast-track legislation and overcome filibusters. At the same time, the opposition retains enough seats to block constitutional amendments, ensuring that confrontation between the two sides is likely to continue. So while these elections strengthened the ruling party, they also set the stage for an intense battle over the future direction of both the government and the conservative opposition.
Well, a lot to keep track of in the days ahead. Hae-ryun, thank you for the coverage.
Thank you for having me.
And the local elections and by-elections witnessed a remarkable voter turnout this year, while there was a halt in voting at some polling stations here in Seoul amid a shortage of ballot papers. Park Jun-an has the details.
Following record-high early voting turnout last week, over 27.2 million people cast their ballots in Korea's June 3rd local elections, out of approximately 44.6 million eligible voters. That brings the final voter turnout to 61%. Not only is this a 10.1 percentage point jump from the previous local elections 4 years ago, but it's also the highest turnout since the first local elections in 1995, which saw 68.4%. Progressive voters were strongly mobilized following the then-President Yoon Suk-yeol's martial law and impeachment, while conservative voters cast their ballots to evaluate the current Lee Jae-myung administration and keep the majority party in check. By region, Jeonnam Gwangju United Special City saw the highest turnout at 65.7%, followed closely by Gangwon-do Province at 64.5% and Gyeongsang-namdo Province at 64.4%. The capital Seoul was above the national average at 63.6%. However, there were issues at 14 polling stations in Seoul, including in the Songpa-gu and Gangnam-do districts, where voting was paused due to a lack of ballot papers. At least one station in Songpa-gu district remained open until 10 p.m. as officials worked to address the problem. The National Election Commission's Secretary General Ho Chul-hoon issued a public apology for the confusion and pledged measures to prevent a recurrence. In response to the issue, the Blue House urged the National Election Commission, as the constitutional body responsible for protecting citizens' voting rights, to ensure there are no disruptions to voting or vote counting in affected areas. The Blue House added that it is closely monitoring the situation. Park Jun-an, Arirang News.
Now, following the elections, President Lee Jae-myung vowed to humbly accept the will of the people and do his best to improve their livelihoods in the year ahead. Yoon Jung-min has more.
The day after the June 3rd local elections, the president said this.
정부도 지방선거에 담긴 우리 국민들의 뜻을 겸허하게 받들어 소속 정당 여부와 관계없이 새로 선출된 지방정부와 적극적으로 협력하겠습니다.
Appearing in a three-colored tie representing unity, President Lee Jae-myung asked politicians to work together for the livelihoods of the people and national unity. The ruling Democratic Party won most races but lost the Seoul mayoral contest by a razor-thin margin in a seat often deemed crucial in South Korean politics. President Lee, who's now in his second year in office, once again vowed to do his utmost to make progress in improving the people's livelihoods and the development of the country.
오늘부터 국민주권 정부의 2년차 임기가 시작됐습니다. 모든 공직자들은 신발끈을 다시 한번 단단히 묶고 국정 속도 배가에 총력을 기울여 주기 바랍니다.
Regarding incidents where certain districts in the capital ran short of ballot papers, the president called for the need to hold those responsible to account after analyzing what went wrong using all administrative authority.
민주공화국에서 무엇보다 철저해야 될 선거 관리에 납득하기 쉽지 않은 허점이 발생한 점에 대해 매우 큰 유감을 표합니다.
His spokesperson added that the president did not mean direct punishment of the National Election Commission. The president went on to call for prevention measures to make sure that not an inch of the people's suffrage has been damaged. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
One year after President Lee Jae-myung took office, promising a pragmatic approach to foreign affairs, South Korea is attracting growing attention as a middle power partner in an increasingly fragmented global landscape. To assess the impact of that strategy, our Oh Soo-young spoke with a leading scholar of Korean geopolitics.
1 year into President Lee Jae-myung's pragmatic diplomacy, there is growing demand for Korea's partnership in an increasingly divided world. That's according to Arnold Levaux, president of Paris-based Asia Center. Under the Lee administration, pragmatic diplomacy has meant pursuing national interests through practical cooperation while broadening Korea's diplomatic options in an increasingly fragmented world.
The key word is adaptation. President Lee inherited a very difficult international environment. The rivalry between the United States and China continues to intensify. Conflict in Europe, like in Ukraine and in the Middle East, Iran, and the Red Sea are affecting global stability.
Over the past year, Seoul has kept close coordination with Washington and Tokyo while expanding engagement with Europe, India, Africa, and other emerging partners. Levaux says that makes Korea valuable to countries looking for more flexible forms of cooperation.
Middle powers do not want to be forced into binary choices. They want to maintain strong alliances while preserving enough autonomy to defend their own interest. The second challenge is economic security. For decades, globalization was mostly about efficiency. Today, it's also about resilience. Many countries today are looking for alternatives to rigid bloc politics. They want flexible partnerships, focus on practical cooperation. And Korea is particularly well positioned to play this role.
President Lee made his diplomatic debut at last year's Group of Seven summit in Canada soon after taking office, and has also been invited this year to the leaders' meeting in France. With that, Levaux says Korea will be expected to bring more than symbolic participation.
This invitation is not only for protocol, it's not for pictures, it's not for etiquette. It's because we believe that Korea can really contribute to the global governance. And we are expecting President Lee to have some concrete proposals. Korea is increasingly present in international debates on security, technology, and governance. I will say that the world already sees Korea as a global actor, while maybe Korea do not perceive itself as a global actor yet. So the question should be how Korea can use this growing influence.
As Lee enters his second year in office, Levaux says the question is no longer only whether Korea has a seat at the table of global governance, but what it makes of it. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
As today marks the first anniversary of the Lee administration, over the past 12 months, the primary focus has been the economy, marked by a push for an AI-driven tech boom and aggressive fiscal policies. Our business correspondent Kim Do-yeon joins us in the studio to break down the administration's economic scorecard. Welcome back, Do-yeon.
Good to be here.
Do-yeon, the most visible achievement highlighted today is the historic surge of the country's benchmark, KOSPI. Tell us more.
Right. So President Lee's focus on the market was clear from day one, choosing the Korea exchange for his very first outsized schedule. The outcome of that directive is a vertical climb for the KOSPI. First, take a listen to what he said.
대한민국 주식시장은 여러분들 아시는 것처럼 너무 불공정하고 불투명하고 다른 나라 사람들이 보면 저 시장을 어떻게 믿냐 이렇게 생각될 정도 아닙니까?
First, he started off with cracking down on any financial crimes or market manipulations. The government warned that things will get tougher, and it started taking off, driven largely by the AI boom and its demand for memory chips. Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix drove the KOSPI up. When the administration assumed office last June, the index stood at the 2,700 level. It is now trading above the 8,500 mark. The government actively engineered this momentum by pivoting toward an ultra-innovation economy. They allocated 10.1 trillion won to build sovereign AI infrastructure, which includes securing 260,000 NVIDIA GPUs to establish the computational foundation for domestic high-tech manufacturing.
Well, this high-tech export boom clearly impacted the broader macroeconomic indicators. But I must say, Doyan, the global situation wasn't all that favorable to the administration, right?
That's right. But the unprecedented rise in exports provided the necessary capital to fund massive fiscal interventions. Following the economic contraction from the December 3rd martial law incident, the government passed a 31.8 trillion won supplementary budget to inject liquidity into the market. When the Middle East war erupted in February, they executed another 26.2 trillion won war supplementary budget to cap oil prices.
These policies were clearly deployed to boost domestic demand, and they have been effective in increasing consumption. Such fiscal maneuvering is necessary when there is budgetary room, and right now we are seeing strong tax revenues backing these measures.
On the trade fronts, Seoul also successfully negotiated down U.S. tariffs from 25% to 15%. And with all this, the Bank of Korea announced that the nation's first quarter economic growth surged to 3.6% on-year basis, with exports hitting a record $219.9 billion.
Well, with the technology and export sectors breaking records and growth rebounding, Doyan, what are some of these structural challenges that still need to be overcome?
Well, the most critical challenge is that a severe K-shaped polarization, largely anchored by the contested real estate market. The administration originally encouraged the stock market surge to act as a pressure valve for housing, the force capital out of non-productive real estate. The government refused to extend the tax deferment period for heavy capital gains taxes on multiple homeowners. However, despite these aggressive demand suppression tactics, actual housing prices have not dropped as significantly as government intended. A meaningful price correction requires a massive increases in housing supply, but severe external factors such as soaring global materials inflation and disrupted supply chains have effectively delayed new residential developments.
To meaningfully lower housing prices, two conditions must be met. First, there must be an expectation that future supply will increase, eliminating the scarcity of homes. Second, there must be an alternative market where people can invest their capital.
So while the administration successfully created that alternative investment market through corporate governance reforms, the physical supply of housing remains artificially constrained by outside forces. Now, all eyes are on the government's second half economic strategy and the upcoming July tax reform, which is widely expected to further increase holding taxes for multiple homeowners to sustain this structural overhaul.
Right. Doyan, thank you for that thorough report tonight.
My pleasure.
The Korean won weakened on Thursday, once pushing the $1 exchange rate back above the 1,530 mark. The financial authorities responded on the same day by pledging swift action against excessive volatility. Kim Jun-hong has this report.
The Korean won weakened further against the US dollar on Thursday, with the exchange rate surpassing 1,530 during trading for the first time in more than 2 months. The rate closed at 1,529.71, up 13.31 from the previous session, after opening 13.61 higher at 1,531. The $1 exchange rate has been highly volatile this year amid the Middle East conflict. Thursday's opening marked the weakest start for the Korean won since late March. It was also the first opening above the 1,531 level since the global financial crisis in 2009. Thursday's jump was driven by a mix of external factors, including renewed tensions between the U.S. and Iran and concerns over additional U.S. tariffs. Korea's heavy reliance on imported energy has made it particularly vulnerable to rising oil prices, while a stronger U.S. dollar has added further pressure to the local currency.
The military conflict between the U.S. and Iran boosted demand for safe haven assets. At the same time, soaring natural gas prices in Europe weakened the euro, helping lift the dollar.
Continued foreign outflows from the local stock market has added to the pressure, with investors converting proceeds into dollars before moving funds abroad. Meanwhile, Korea's official foreign reserves declined in May as dollar funds were used to support the foreign exchange market. Reserves stood at $427 billion at the end of the month, down $880 million from April, according to the Bank of Korea on Thursday. The central bank attributed the decline to market stabilization measures, including a swap arrangement with the National Pension Service. As of April, Korea remained the world's 12th largest holder of foreign reserve holdings. Also on Thursday, Finance Minister Koo Yoon-chol stressed the government's readiness to respond to excessive volatility in financial markets. He said the authorities are closely monitoring market conditions as external uncertainties remain high. Kim Jun-ho, Arirang News.
In other news, though the U.S. and Iran have been trading a series of airstrikes over the past week, U.S. President Donald Trump hinted at having no intention of resuming a full-scale war unless U.S. troops are killed. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
Despite recent hostilities between the U.S. and Iran, President Donald Trump has reportedly insisted on showing that their ceasefire remained intact. According to the Wall Street Journal on Wednesday local time, President Trump has told his aides that he does not intend to resume a full-scale war with Iran unless American military personnel are killed. In fact, he presented the death of U.S. troops as the threshold for terminating the ceasefire, suggesting that he may be willing to tolerate smaller-scale military clashes that fall short of that level. In fact, Trump said on Wednesday that progress in talks with Iran could come within days while talking to reporters at the White House.
I hear the negotiation itself has gone very well, actually. Very well.
Mr. President.
It could happen. I mean, if it happens, and it might not happen, who knows? But if it happens, it could happen like over the weekend.
Trump said that under a deal being discussed with Iran, Washington will get Tehran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium, repeating that the material will be removed from within the Islamic Republic's borders. Meanwhile, Lebanon and Israel have agreed to implement a ceasefire following U.S.-facilitated talks in Washington. The U.S. State Department released a joint statement from all three parties on Wednesday.
The ceasefire is contingent on a complete cessation of Hezbollah fire and the evacuation of all Hezbollah operatives from the South Litani sector.
The two sides agreed to swiftly create pilot zones in which the Lebanese armed forces will take exclusive control of the territory to the exclusion of all non-state actors. Haller added that two parties had no hostile intent toward one another and committed to continuing U.S.-brokered negotiations toward a broader security and peace agreement. However, despite the new ceasefire, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said on Wednesday that Israeli forces would not withdraw from Lebanon for the time being and would continue military operations. In a statement, Katz said that the Israeli military would remain stationed in the so-called buffer zone established in southern Lebanon to protect Israeli communities from Hezbollah attacks. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
The South Korean film Colony has surpassed 4 million moviegoers nationwide just 2 weeks after its release. According to the Korean Film Council on Thursday, the film recorded 4,043,755 admissions and is also leading advanced ticket sales. Now, with this milestone, Colony has become the fastest film released this year to hit new records. Directed by Yeon Sang-ho, the zombie thriller stars Chun Ji-hyun and marks the director's latest entry into the zombie genre.
Relief from the early summer heat is on the way. Temperatures will ease back to seasonal norms over the next several days. Seoul will see highs below the 30-degree mark, returning to what's typical for this time of year. Tomorrow, light rain is expected over central regions and the Jeolla-do provinces from the early morning into the morning hours. Most areas will see the rain end by morning, though parts of the inland and mountainous areas of Gangwon-do and northern Chungcheongbuk-do provinces could see showers linger into the later morning hours. Rainfall amount will be light, with less than 5 millimeters expected in the central regions and the Jeolla-do provinces. Tomorrow, Seoul will start the day at 18 degrees Celsius, Chuncheon at 17 degrees, Busan at 19 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 27 degrees, Daegu at 29 degrees, Jeju at 23 degrees. We'll hold on to this near normal temperatures for a while longer. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.